you've stepped onto that stage, you've stepped onto a national award stage, but I know for a fact that you've been through a couple of tourism awards processes with different businesses, and there's been some years where you've actually been told from judges what happened, and they just go, what's going on with your submission? And you had to go back to square one and start the whole process again. Can you talk? I don't want to take you back to a bad place, because you got to the National Tourism Award winning spot, but hey, let's go back there.
Well, I get even more credit on that trip to Cairns for showing up to breakfast the next day in the same clothes. Everyone thought I'd had a wild night, but in fact, my luggage never arrived. Yes, that journey leading to the National Award win started a few years before that. I'd been the manager of the convention center for about a year and a half. We reopened, and we decided it was time to get back into the tourism awards and make a submission in the category of business tourism. So we prepared our submission and submitted it. The event was at the National Convention Center, so I was there with a table of people that worked with me. Every single person who worked at the National Convention Center knew we were part of this process, and we were pretty smug, I guess is the word, about the fact that we'd at least win at the local level. I mean, really, we were the National Convention Center. Well, I'm sitting there at the table, and Gary's up on stage and very graciously made an announcement about certain categories that were not receiving an award that evening. So there was going to be no award and no commendation. And there were a few categories that he read out. One of them was our category, business tourism. And I'm listening to this thinking, I think he just told us we didn't win. And I said to everyone at our table, we haven't won tonight, so everyone just calm down.
Stop drinking.
Yeah, because we're not getting up on stage. And frankly, it was embarrassing to be in that position. I never wanted to be in that position again. We went back and looked at our submission and thought, you know what? This isn't deserving of an award. It was a very amateurish effort. And I've always thought that an award-winning submission has three elements. One, you've got to have your great product. You've got to be able to tell your story about that product, and you've got to be able to make it look good. So when you get all three of those things right, then you're on the right track. I always felt that we had a great product. In that first year, not only did we not tell our story very well, but the submission itself didn't look professional. It looked very amateurish. The next year, we were determined that we were going to turn that around. So we did kind of start over in that second year. And we did win at the local level. So we won the Canberra Capital Region Tourism Award. We went on to the Nationals, and we didn't win there. And then we thought we really set ourselves a goal. Rather than focusing in our minds as we created the submission in that third year, rather than focusing on the local awards, we set our sights at national. Everything we did in that award was geared to that judge sitting in that room who not only maybe had never set foot in the National Convention Center, but didn't really even like Canberra and, wouldn't go there by choice. So we knew we had to overcome those biases on the part of the national judges, perhaps against Canberra as the national capital, perhaps against our business, certainly someone who didn't know us. So we always had those judges in that room in mind when we were telling our story. And it worked. In that third year, we got all three of those elements right.
There is a number of businesses, and it's a very Canberra thing, that we can just stick the word national on it and think that it's better than a local product, and it's put national and it's Australia's best of something. Mm. You put national in the convention centre, but you know that you were competing against convention centres that were brand new, that had $300 million refits, that, how can something that had a soft refurb, a small group of staff and, challenges against international destinations still tell a fantastic story? How did you pull out from not being able, I guess, telling a story that you thought was, in your own words, quite amateurish, to really digging out, what did you uncover that wasn't told in the previous times to tell that professional story and justify that you were deserving of that word national? What were the things in the business that you sort of dug and uncovered?
I think one of the things we learned through this process was to relate our story specifically to tourism. So when we talked about what we did, we presented our results, we presented our graphs and tables, but we always then related that to what that meant for tourism in the capital. You know, we learned that in the mind of judges, tourism is a specific thing. It's fun, it's interesting, people want to be engaged with it, people want to be involved with it. So whenever we told our story, we used examples, photos, testimonials that conveyed that message, that this relates to tourism, that tourism is fun, that tourism is exciting, and we used our customers to help us tell our story and reinforce that sort of tourism message all the way through. So we really focused on the touristic elements of what we did, because a lot of what we do at the convention center might not be considered tourism really specific, but a lot of it is. We bring people to Canberra, people come to attend conferences, concerts, come to exhibitions, all that sort of thing. And I know I'm still talking in the present tense, even though I don't work there anymore. Old habits die hard. But those are the elements. You never leave tourism. Those elements are the ones we focused on to illustrate our story. So we focused on things like exhibitions and concerts and shows and things that brought a lot of people in from around the country.
And also, you're only one business within a tourist community, and probably the convention centre more than other businesses can justify sort of on spending as people stay pre and post convention and things like that. How important is telling the story outside of your doors and the impact that someone that might be coming for a 2-day conference then has on that local community? Because that's not your worry. Your worry is about how much they're spending inside your door and are they going to pay your invoice and are you paying your staff this month?
But you can use those examples to illustrate your impact on the economy, and that comes up in each submission, I think. We took an approach of telling a series of stories, and when you start looking at how your business impacts on the local economy, it's not just about people staying longer. I mean, that's a very important thing, and spending money in other businesses. It's about how what you do helps other businesses take hold in Canberra. You know, the fact that you exist may help other suppliers run their businesses and what that means to the economy and to the community. The fact that you exist may help people provide jobs for people, provide casual work for students. That helps the tertiary education sector in Canberra, because people might choose to come to Canberra to study because they know there's casual work available at your venue. And that's important. That's an impact on the local economy that you might never really think about otherwise. So being part of the Tourism Award process does encourage you to think outside the box a bit about, you know, what you've achieved and the impact on people. We used a story of a gentleman that's worked for us for a number of years and what his involvement in working for the convention center did for him personally and for his family. And I think people like that human story to illustrate a point. So we did focus on that kind of story throughout our submission.
My final question is, do you, and it comes back to something both Rob and Justin have talked about today, do you answer the question with lots of facts and figures and be straight to the point? Or do you be fun and playful and personal? How do you make sure that a big business doesn't cross the line into sounding like a little hokey, loose business?
Yeah. Yeah, it is a fine line. I was always thinking about that judge up in that room. I wanted to inject a bit of humanness and humor into the submission without trivializing what we did. So the combination that we hit on was telling the story, the facts and figures to back it up, and then using visuals, testimonials, graphics, photos to illustrate that, and to provide, you know, case studies and a little bit of humor. So you do have to balance both. You need to have the facts and figures to support your answers, but you also want to provide the engaging illustration for that. We kind of had a goal that we had 30 pages, and in our 30 pages, to never have a whole page just of text, that we always broke that up visually with little photos, and you can have lots of little photos on a page. You can have text boxes, you can have little quotes, you can have testimonials from people, you can have a graph, a chart, whatever, so that the judges weren't flipping through pages, seeing page after page of text. And one of the ways we did that was we looked at the text and said, rather than take 3/4 of a page to say this, can we take a paragraph and then illustrate it with something, whether it's a picture or a graph or a quote or something, to have that combination so that visually it was appealing. And I think that's what we got right in the third year. We really lifted our game with how we presented our story.
But you've got to make sure it doesn't become sort of too Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
No, that's right. That's
all
right.
Lovely and fantastic, and it still tells the process of.
Well, that's right. There are
business.
questions about your success and your sustainability and all of that sort of thing. And you need to have those facts and figures to back up what you're claiming. You make your statement, and then you have your supporting statistics, and then you have your illustration. So that that's what we did.
Great, thank you. There's an insight from a judge, a national award winner, and somebody that's been running some of Canberra's largest businesses. Any questions for Cindy at this point that you'd like to ask? We've got a couple.
Hi,
First name here.
Sharon Phillips from the airport. How do you get around not going through a laundry list process when you're trying to describe your facilities?
So the question was, how do you get past just providing a laundry list or just a checklist saying this is what we do? How do you tell an entertaining or a colourful story about something that's day to day?
Well, pretend you're around a dinner table with someone and you're talking to them about your business. You want to make sure you include those important things, but you're going to tell it in a much more engaging way. And I think that's how you should talk to the judges. They are real people, and they would engage with your story the same way your friends around a dinner table would. Then you can go back and check that you've included everything you need to include, but I think it's in the way that information is presented. Sometimes you need your dot points, or you need your graph to say, these are the things we did, and these were the outcomes. And you can get a lot of information in a small space doing it that way, and then you can have. Do you have an example of that?
Yeah, I just have an example, which is a summary, a campaign summary of 5 dot points with an explanation below. But before, part of the question actually went into some stats and figures to demonstrate the impact. But they've also got in diagrams and things like that. So don't get caught into putting in a dot point or a table-only submission. You do have to be a bit colourful and imagine somebody's walking through your business for the first time, or you're taking somebody on a tour. Actually take somebody on a tour with pictures and words about what they should feel, what they should think about, what they could smell if they were there, what they could hear. And I know there's a lot of sights and sounds at the airport, so you need to balance that. And why is your airport different? Why isn't it it's not a small little shed stuck in a paddock anymore? Why is this an international class experience for people? Final question from Dennis over here.
Just a couple of questions. Do you need to have a graphic designer to do it if you're not very good at that sort of thing, or someone who's an expert on Excel?
I was crap at that, and there was no one at the convention centre really that had those skills.
Yeah.
We used the resources that were offered to us through Australian Capital Tourism, and that included the student program at the University of Canberra. Yeah. And I always felt that I wanted to tell the story of the convention centre. I felt that I could tell that story passionately, but I couldn't present it. So our student intern helped us with that, and that's basically what she did for us. Yeah. So I wasn't in the same position as Justin, where we had a graphic designer that I could call on to collaborate with. So we used our student to do that. So that's perhaps an option. I do think some help with that is, if you're not good at that yourself, it's something that is worth paying for to get that presentation right. I really do think that's important. And just the other thing I'll say is thinking about it from the national perspective, you have no idea who's going to be judging your award, what state they're from. So I put something in my award to appeal to a judge from every state and territory in Australia. So whether it was a photo of people from Western Australia, whether it was a quote, a testimonial from someone from the Northern Territory, whether it was, you know, a group of people from Queensland or an event we did from Queensland, I just made sure that my illustrations covered every state and territory so that it had a bit of a national feel about it, so that a judge from Queensland could feel they could personally relate to it because here's something the Convention Centre had done for a Queensland organization, say. Did that work? I don't know. I mean, you try everything and
And you had a supplementary question, Dennis?
Thanks, Cindy. No,
That's all? Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Cindy. And that's 3 of our locals. And thank you to Justin, Rob, and Cindy, and really different ideas, perspectives, and experiences. But as you can see, that they're all coming up with the same sort of lessons, and there is a bit of a system and a process behind this that we're uncovering. And please take the opportunity to have a chat to our judges as we. Hand over to our next speaker this morning. We're going to mic her up, so thank you.